Nothing Personal starts in 30 seconds. It's just business. This is Nothing Personal.
Here you go.
Resuscitated. That's the Nothing Personal word of the day. It is Tuesday, 11/12/24, and the Miami Dolphins have resuscitated their season. One little victory over the Los Angeles Rams of Los Angeles, and the Dolphins go from maybe the top pick in the draft to now maybe a wild card team, which just shows you the mediocrity of the NFL this year, the parity that exists sort of in the middle and at the bottom. But so many things happened during the game that are worthy of note. I want to talk about Tyreek Hill. He got a couple catches. I think he had 16 yards. Big story of the game. He shows up on the injured list out of nowhere. The injury list as it relates to the injury report, I should say. Thank you, Sarah. The injury report is something throughout the week, and the NFL takes it seriously because there's gambling involved. So you want to know who's questionable, who's probable, who's doubtful, who's out, who's in. Everybody scours the report, and then you can tweet, whoa, this guy just appeared out of nowhere. I wonder if he stubbed his toe on the way to the Davy last night. So Tyreek Hill's up with a wrist, and then we got word of something maybe far more important. That Tyreek Hill's wrist is making him on the report and questionable, but it's a wrist that he says was aggravated, the surgically repaired wrist, aggravated during that arrest all those weeks ago. Do you remember the video when Tyreek Hill got pulled over for speeding right outside Pro Player Stadium, Hard Rock Stadium now? And then he was shoved to the ground and then is in handcuffs. You remember that? Well, there are lawyers. We haven't necessarily seen whether any lawsuits have been filed quite yet, whether there's been any money changing hands. Tyreek wanted to use that as an example of growth and change and learning. Other people wanted to use that as confirmation bias of the police and everything that they do that's wrong versus everything they do that's right. But you don't hear much about it. And then we get word that the wrist has been bad and aggravated since that moment, which of course makes me wonder why he wasn't on the injury report every week since that moment. And if it really is true that his wrist is bothering him from that moment, that's something that is germane to any sort of issues going on off the field as it relates to the Dade County Police or as it relates to the Dolphins and their season. But the game starts and there's Tyreek Hill. So he's playing and Tua's playing. The Dolphins and the Rams, you've got Stafford. He won I was going to say World Series, Sarah. How funny is that? He won a Super Bowl. Tua's trying to win a Super Bowl. The Dolphins are trying to do something they haven't done since 2000, which is win a playoff game. And I've never seen a 2-6 team be in a situation where if they win, all of a sudden their fans are saying, wow, we're a playoff team. I hope it reminded you, as it did me, of when the Yankees won Game 4 of the World Series, and then we're up 3-0 in Game 5 after Jazz and Aaron Judge hit a home run, and everyone said, oh, we're going to win this. We're going to be down 3-2. We're going to go back to L.A., win Game 6, win Game 7. For crying out loud, we just won the World Series. And then that was it. They lost that actual game, and that was the World Series for the Dodgers. But that is sort of the feeling that people have around a team that's 3-6, but a game and a half back of the wild card. And what supports that feeling is the notion that it's an easy schedule, They're playing a bunch of bad teams, the Raiders, the Patriots, the Jets, the Browns, the Jets. What a dream. First of all, it's not lost on me that the Jets are now considered, way to go, Woody, that they're now a patsy for any playoff-bound teams. I'm sure that's exactly what the Jets had in mind when they fired Saleh and brought in Uberlicht, and it's resulted in nothing but losses. But the part of the game that should have the most attention this morning, and I don't know what you'll hear on recap shows, but the part of the game that bothered me the most was when Tua threw an interception and there was a return by the Rams, and Tua went in to make a tackle on the defender who had become an offensive running back for all intents and purposes, and Tua tried to tackle him and led with his head. His head ended up hitting the shin of the player. If his head had hit the knee of the player, he would have had a concussion for sure. And all Tua said after the game is, almost laughing, he said, that's pretty bad tackling form. If Mike McDaniel is to be the coach of that team and Chris Greer is to be the GM and Steve Ross is to be the owner, no matter how much money Steve Ross has taken off the table in recent transactions to limited partners and venture capital funds, when you've got an asset that you consider an asset, you protect that asset. And if that asset cannot protect himself, you take that asset out of the position to get hurt. The last thing the Dolphins and the NFL want is for Tua to get another concussion. And it's not just because it'll be the end of the Dolphins or the end of Tua. It just furthers the narrative around concussions in the NFL and the big bad blue tent. I don't understand why when you tell a player what to do, they don't do it. I've had players tell me, but David, it's the heat of the battle. The game speeds up. I can't help myself. I had this conversation, Sarah. Sarah, by the way, is producing today. What's up, Sarah? In the number one chair. So far, I think we're live. I think everything's happening totally smoothly. Although she hasn't said one word to me yet, folks. I'll let you know the first time she yells in my ear. But so far, silent as a church mouse. So Hanley Ramirez was one of the players we had, and he had a bad shoulder. And when he would dive as shortstop in the hole toward third base, he would often dislocate his shoulder. And we said, you got to stop diving. And he said, I can't help it. And we said, can you try? And he said, it's an instinct. When the ball is there, I want to get it. I said, funny, teach yourself a new instinct. And so one of the things I joked with him about is that we were going to put some sort of tacks, you know, those thumbtacks on the field right in that area, in his diving area. So if he dove, forget hurting his shoulder, he would land on thumbtacks. Our grounds crew and our GM said no to that. Hanley's agent, bless your soul, you weren't too happy with that, Adam. But that said, you got to retrain yourself. When Tua throws an interception, he needs to be taught a very simple rule. Walk off the field. I'm more than happy as the Dolphins to have 11v10 after an interception. It should be a very simple rule. Sort of like when the seatbelt sign comes off on the plane, what do? You take your seatbelt off and go get your bag from the overhead. When you throw an interception, walk off the field. I don't want him to perfect his tackling form. It's absurd. So the Dolphins win the game. Everyone's excited. They've resuscitated their season. But Monday is also a day where teams come clean, recognize, because we're done with week 10. Can you imagine we're in double digits already? It's week 1 was practically, only 10 weeks ago. It's insane. So teams meet the media, coaches meet the media. A couple of things happen in front of the media that I would just like to make you laugh, because I laughed, and there's a 42.9% chance you'll find it funny too. We talk a lot about the playbooks that are used by coaches and GMs and presidents. Owners don't know how to use it, but they try. And it's about disrespecting you, the fans. and the audience and the media, because for some reason, they all believe that we're buying what they're selling. I want you to tell me if you notice anything at all about the following teams. The Chicago Bears, Matt Eberflus, he met the media and said Caleb is our starter, which is good. Caleb Williams has been, he's rookie of the year, all pro. He is the difference maker. The Bears are, I would say, a week or two away at most of being the best team in football with him as your anchor, figuring out your whole new stadium plans. But he said beside Caleb Williams, who's been the number one, everything is on the table. And he said that there's going to be changes, but Monday, as in yesterday, is a long day in terms of the evaluation of everything. I love that. I love the picture of a coach walking into the office on Monday after a loss where you know exactly what your team is because you've seen it week in and week out. You know what you have. It's like in baseball. Let me just give you the calendar comparison. We're about 10 weeks in, so my math tells me that that's about 100 games in. So that's about 2 months left. So you're right around the beginning of August. It would be as though we walk into the clubhouse in August and say, let's start evaluating things. How are we looking? It's not what we've seen for 100 games. We're going to change right now. Yes, sometimes we would delude ourselves, but I'm not sure what Eberflus is evaluating. I guess he's going to fire everyone on the offensive side because that's the problem with Caleb Williams. Clearly, I guess we'll start firing some coordinators, but we're going to evaluate everything. Not the sun and the curtains, but we'll evaluate everything else. Then Brian Daboll hits the tarmac of media. He said he was asked about Daniel Jones, another guy who you want to have as the anchor for your team for sure. Not overpaid. He will bring you to the promised land for sure. He was asked about Daniel Jones, and he said, we're going to spend a lot of time watching tape, and we're going to evaluate things. I would say we're evaluating our team. That's what we're doing. Yeah, you got to go back to the tape for sure. You've got to break that thing down because there's no other way to evaluate everything without going play by play with Daniel Jones. And I think we should only go over last week's game. You don't want to go over the course of his entire career. Why would you use that to evaluate anything? That's just obviously incorrect. We'll get misled. But now we're going to evaluate this last game against the Panthers in Germany. We'll evaluate everything. Good. Appreciate that. Thank you, Brian. Is that you, Antonio Pierce? He just finished his bye week. Remember what he said? We spent the bye week evaluating everything. Shane Steichen of the Colts. Remember they benched Anthony Richardson, brought in Joe Flacco, who's been horrific. Comeback player of the year. Here's the general rule, comeback player of the year. That was a one-time thing. Let's try. There's nothing that presidents and GMs like more than trying to catch lightning twice in the same bottle. We're all victims of it. I assume you all do that in your life too. When you do something and it causes a reaction that you love, that really works for you, either in business or in pleasure, don't you try to set up to do the same action, thinking that you're going to get the same reaction? Like you light a candle and you get yourself ready. You wear an outfit that you really did well in, and you try to do that again. You're like, oh man, I was set up for greatness. And now I'm back home alone. I think we've all done that. That's what you do with players when they used to be good and then they're bad and then they have a flash of good. And you're saying that's not just a flash. This is now a permanent state of mind and being and performance. But of course, Joe Flacco has been absolutely terrible. Shane Steichen said, we're evaluating everything. I'm sorry. I may have ruined it, Sarah. We had it all set up for everyone to laugh because all these coaches say the same damn thing. They're all evaluating everything. I think it's a very good skill to have because generally when you're evaluating something, you want to evaluate everything sort of like lawyers do. You look at both sides. You look at all the possible results. You look at the ripple effect of certain decisions. In sports, we say we're evaluating everything, and it's such poppycock. It just is. There's no time when you're sitting with your GM or your manager and you're actually going through, let's go through everything A to Z. You sit in a meeting and you're talking about what is the biggest issue of the day, whether it's Daniel Jones or Joe Flacco or Tua, whatever the issue is. You rarely sit down other than the off season to do an all hands meeting of, oh, let's take every side of the ball. The whole thing's ridiculous. You can't control players. I tried. Logan, I know you listen to the show. Hi, Logan Morrison. I really do care about you. You know I do. We did something that only a few select people have done. We visited the troops together. It's now been over a decade since we did that. You are very big into social media. I can only imagine if podcasts were a thing back when you got your Twitter account, you would have had a podcast. Logan, you know you would have. Players now, it's a thing. Active players have podcasts. I don't understand why players would do podcasts during a season. It would drive me insane as a team president, and there's not one thing I could do about it. I can't legislate what players do on their off time. I can participate in it from time to time, but I can't legislate against it. Players are very smart. Careers are very short. Very smart to try to get a microphone and a platform and try to build it and try to figure out if you can be Kelsey. Micah Parsons has a podcast. And what's interesting is that players, now that they have their own way to disseminate information, they really don't need the beat writers anymore the way they used to. They don't need to get word out through anybody else's mouth. They basically can get word out through their own platform, through their own mouth at the exact time they want to do it. Most players are in very good control of what they're doing. When Micah Parsons took to the microphone a couple days ago, it is impossible for me to believe that he didn't know the storm he would create. When you have a group of people in front of your locker, you can control what you say, and you can control how you say it. You know, if you're a Cowboys player, you're going to be asked about the sun. You know, if you're a Cowboys player, you're going to be asked about Mike McCarthy. Micah Parsons sat down. Actually, I think he was standing up. I want you to listen to what he said, and then I want to talk about the problem with what he said. Sarah, will you play Micah Parsons, please?
Above my pay grade about if Mike is coaching again next year. But, all coaching aside, Mike can leave and go wherever he wants. But the guys I kind of feel bad for is guys like Zach Martin and guys who might be on their last show on their way out, because that's who I wanted to hold the trophy for. You want to win games and do great things with those type of legends who put in more time and work than Mike McCarthy ever did. So those are the kind of guys that I have so much sympathy and hurt for.
He then had to apologize for what he said and backtrack on what he said and gaslight us on what he said. And he did it in an interesting way, of course, on his podcast. He had to meet with the coach after, so the coach could then give his quote, which he did. He said, when something does create questions for others in the locker room, something that I've always done, a conversation has to happen. So Mike and I had a conversation this morning, handled those things as men should handle it. I think that's old white man speak, but as men should handle it, I always thought that meant fisticuffs. Let's settle this like a man. Boop. The old Alexis on Schitt's Creek. Is that what Mike McCarthy did to Micah Parsons? It sort of touched him in the nose. Boop. I don't know exactly what that means as men handle it. Maybe they just had a conversation where he said, Micah, what are you doing? And I would ask, if I were the GM of the team, which Jerry Jones should be doing, What was the purpose? I always wanted to learn from the players. When you say something, tell me what is the provenance of what you said. You obviously have a reason, and let's talk about it and see if we can clean this up. So what they came up with is what Parsons said after on his show, which is, listen, I didn't expect this to be negative. Why would I want that to be perceived negatively? I actually thought it would be positive what I was saying about my teammate and brother, Zach Martin, this Ring of Honor Hall of Fame guy. That's who I was talking about. It was all about the veterans and how disappointed I am that we can't hoist the Lombardi Trophy for them. But how is that point? And you should think about this whenever you are talking to the media or whenever you're talking to your friends or your boss. Make sure that what you say is somehow forwarding the agenda of what your intention is and what you mean and what you want. What I mean by that is every sentence should be purposeful. When you're building a case for something, in this case, we're to believe that the Micah Parsons case was for Zach Martin to be recognized for the great career he's had and how upset he is that they've never won with Zach Martin. What does talking about Mike McCarthy and how he can go wherever he wants and he hasn't been around for a long time, I'm just curious, what in his mind, how does that further people focusing on Zach Martin? It has the opposite impact, actually. It truly instead puts the focus on, wow, we've got an issue with the coach. There's an issue in the clubhouse. Mike McCarthy must be dead coach walking. Why wouldn't Jerry Jones just do it now and be done with it? It leads to the speculation of Deion Sanders. It leads to the speculation of Rex Ryan, who went crazy against Micah Parsons. The frustrating part as an executive is that this is a self-inflicted distraction for a team that is so in need of something positive. It forces both management and the player to keep a story going. You can't tourniquet it because you have to explain it, and it won't go away if you don't. And your explanation, however rehearsed it was, frankly, made it worse. Pay attention to that. It happens more often than you'd actually believe, and it certainly does surprise me. My take on it, just so you know, is that he should be getting slammed for what he said. He's upset that people are slamming him. And this is not me in any way defending McCarthy, nor telling you that McCarthy shouldn't be fired, because he should be, along with the GM of the team. But the reason why I'm upset is that Parsons should know better. He's been around. And I have expectations for veteran players to understand that their words have meanings, their actions have consequences. When you talk about your coach, people are going to listen, they're going to glom onto it, and it's going to become a story that I've got to deal with. That was always the threshold for me that I would talk to players about and my staff. If I have to get involved, then it's a problem. I don't want to get involved in all of the back and forth and all of the things that go on in the clubhouse at the end of a game or at the beginning of a game. I say it to my managers. I say it to the players. I say it to the GM. Don't make me have to get involved here. And Jerry Jones, he's going to stay quiet because I don't know what his story is other than what we've told you, but this is an example where Jerry Jones would not be able to stay quiet. Nothing. Personal pick of the day. Let's talk about something. We are 156 and 164. We had the Rams 2.5 over the Dolphins, and that lost. So we're back to 8 games under. Let's talk about the NBA tonight. It's a full slate. Who's not excited for an NBA regular season Tuesday? It's the start of group play for the Emirates NBA Cup. Raise your hand if you remember last year's Emirates NBA Cup. Well, it wasn't called it, but now Emirates bought the naming rights to it. But who remembers? I do. The Los Angeles Lakers won the cup. They won the tourney. They hoisted the trophy. Remember, they raised a flag to the rafters, and I laughed. They were so into it because the last 4 teams get to go to Vegas, baby. You make 500 grand for winning it, plus the money you get for getting to the finals. 250 grand if you lose it in the finals. Remember, this is the tournament where it's a regular season game, but it's really group play for this in-season tourney. And then if the top 2 teams in the group, you get to go to the quarterfinals, and then it's single elimination. And then if you make it to the semis, 4 teams, you get to go to Vegas. And remember, all the stats are regular season stats, including the semifinal games in Vegas, just not the final game. Riddle me that, Adam Silver. The NBA in-season cup final game, that's like it didn't even happen. What do I think about this? I'm going to tell you. Of course, that's what we do on Nothing Personal. The NBA is so desperate to come up with content to get its players engaged. And they figured out the only way to do it is to get extra broadcast money for something during the regular season. And the only way to do that is to make it so players will play. And the only way to do that is to make it so players get paid. So I want you to understand the math here. A player making $50 million a year will get an extra 500 grand for winning. That would seem to you, that doesn't seem like incentive enough. It is. When we go to players and say, hey, want to go to a speech, want to go to a bar mitzvah, we'll give you 100 grand. They're like, hell yeah. For an hour of my time, I'm in. Extra money and a trip to Vegas on the house, it's gambling money. Maybe I'll go shopping at the Forum Shops, pick up a little gift at watch time. This is how desperate the NBA is. And this is how the other leagues are copying and trying to copy what the NBA is doing. How many times have I been in a conversation in baseball where the question is, what could we do other than shortening the regular season from 162 to 154? What else could we do? Well, we could do the World Baseball Classic the middle of the season and not do the All-Star game that particular year. That would be more exciting, and owners and players would like that better. They'd be stretched out. We could do some sort of World Baseball Classic as an Emirates NBA Cup, some sort of MLB Cup where it becomes a tournament, and we can do a mini World Series in the middle of the season. Talk about that. You knock on Skipper's door at ESPN back in the day. Any interest? Well, we've got MLB Network. We could always cover it. We're looking for incremental dollars here. The union, Tony Clark, or the NBA Players Association head, they say to the league and the commissioner, hey, we'll do this, but pay us. But wait, you're getting paid anyway to play the regular season. Yeah, but we're not really playing 81. Yeah, but you should. You're being paid to. Have you ever seen a baseball player just take games off? Well, don't they get every Sunday off? Not all of them. You see what leagues are trying to do for you, the fan? They're trying to make you feel better about the money that you spend on season tickets or game tickets. They're trying to make it so you don't look out on the court and say, my God, my favorite players aren't playing. And when they do play, it's so ugly and horrible because all they do is chuck threes. It's like they don't even care. Why should I care? The thought is when you watch games tonight, the players will have this increased sense of care. And we'll know quickly. Sarah, is Embiid playing tonight? Do we know, against the Knicks? We've got the Sixers plus 1.5 over the Knicks as our pick of the day. Embiid's suspension is over, that 3-game joke suspension when he wasn't going to play anyway because of his health. But they wanted to get rid of that suspension for putting his hands on Marcus Hayes, the columnist for the Inquirer, get him back in time for this group play. I have not seen, I admit it. I don't know if you have, Sarah, but I've not seen whether Embiid is playing, but he is expected to play. Isn't that unbelievable? He's going to play. It's November 12th. Welcome back, Joel. Does that mean it's working? It really does. If you've got your best players who generally don't play and they all start playing because they all want extra money and they want the trip to Vegas with or without their families, depending on who it is. Way to go, Adam. You did it. Now it's just up to the fans. Are you going to care? All right, we come back. I'm going to review a movie that will likely be the most interesting movie I watched this year. And then we're going to talk about something going on in Philadelphia where there may be one of the biggest misunderstandings about team finance that I've come across in my career. You're going to want to stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. It's David Samson coming at you live, 8 a.m. Nothing Personal with David Samson is the YouTube channel. You can hit subscribe and get into the chat. Try to guess our word of the day. You can go on davidsamsonpodcast.com. Please do. You get merch. There's great stuff. It's holiday shopping time soon. We will put some new items up there, and we'll do a holiday sale because it's Hanukkah's late this year. It's Hanukkah and Christmas are on the same day, which defeats the purpose for people who have two parents of different religions. The whole benefit of having a Jew marry a non-Jew is that you get to celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas, and it's supposed to be 8 days of Hanukkah, then Christmas, but when they're at the same time, that's terrible. Everything was late this year. Yeah, Hanukkah starts on Christmas, but we'll do some holiday sales. We call it holiday because we don't want to offend anyone. It's a Christmas sale. I'm just playing the numbers. 4869. It's a Hanukkah sale. Just playing the numbers. One of you, I appreciate the suggestion to watch movies. I keep a list on my phone. You've seen it. I literally keep a list of what you tell me to see. I literally just got something, Sarah, that is funny. The Giants are in on Juan Soto. Whew, from John Heyman. Color me shocked. And that's yesterday when we heard the Blue Jays are all in. It's so good. I wonder why that happens right as a meeting's going to happen between the Mets and Soto, and the Yankees are getting ready to fly out to meet Soto. Every team, they're really in. They're not just sort of in, man. They're really in. We're not just dipping our toes in the soda fountain. We're not just dropping pennies. We're dropping hundo bills. They get all wet and your wishes don't come true, but that's the kind of stuff we're dropping. We're getting on a plane. Let's make sure we get it out there. Let's make sure our fan base knows that we're ready to go. It's so good. We'll get to more on Soto in a minute. I got a good one for you on that. So this movie that we're watching yesterday is you give me suggestions, and sometimes I watch them. There's a movie called The Substance. Have you heard of this? With Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, the daughter of Andy McDowell. I think I need to stop saying that because Margaret Qualley has done from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to The Maid. She's got a full career on her own. So I don't ever need to say that anymore. So I'm not. Margaret Qualley and Demi Moore play each other. She's the young Demi Moore. Demi Moore is the old Margaret Qualley. This movie will get a lot of attention if you read about it. And it's not for children. It is an adult-themed movie. There's obviously a ton of nudity, but that's not the issue. That's never the issue. The issue for me, I never really understood the whole guns and violence and serial killers versus a man or woman's naked body, but that's just me. But anyway, I digress. The thing about this movie is that Demi Moore plays a character who makes her living with her face and body, and she gets older. She looks in the mirror and realizes, wow, I'm not who I used to be. Does this sound familiar to any of us? Then Dennis Quaid is the booker of a show and says, hey, we're replacing you. We need a younger you. It's harsh, but it happens. It's real. So she realizes, Demi Moore, that there's a substance she can take that will make her younger. The problem is you're only younger for a week, and then you go back to being yourself the following week. And then you can take the substance again and be young again for the next week. But then it switches off, 7 days on, 7 days off. The part of the movie that is important to understand is that when you do things to change your body, it will have an impact on your body. You don't get to look like you've gone crazy with plastic surgery until you go crazy with plastic surgery and you look and you say, I've gone so far, I can't stop. There are very few people who have that happen to. More people can do a touch up here, a touch up there, and recognize that age is going to win, how unfair it is that age wins, especially for women. There's no question about it. This movie turns that into the most interesting story with the most interesting result. It is gory. The last act of the movie is especially gory. Again, no children. It requires your full attention, though. You know we have nothing in front of us. Sarah's producing today. Thank you, Sarah. Great job so far. So far, no issues that I can tell. Oh, was that our first issue? Did that really just happen while I was saying, "Oh, can anyone hear me?" Hello, hello, Norman. There's no issue. I was just making up an issue. I thought that'd be funny. Sarah got nervous. What's the issue? Everything okay? I like corrections. I told you Layla George yesterday is the ex-wife of Johnny Depp. Nope, she's the ex-wife of Sean Penn. Got it wrong. It's corrected. Thank you for that. Can we talk about the Phillies, please? The Philadelphia Phillies. Something came out a couple days ago, and there's a huge misunderstanding, and I'm going to clear it up for you. The Philadelphia Phillies have sold some LP interests. They've gone out to raise about $500 million. They brought in 3 new investors. And what was reported is that John Middleton, yes, the same one who loves to spend stupid money, yes, the same one who wants nothing more than to win a ring, nothing more than to win a ring, will do anything necessary to win a ring, will operate in a completely financially irresponsible way to win a ring. Well, guess what? When you raise your payroll to a point that you don't make money, you've got to fund losses. You know, as a aficionado of nothing personal, you know how to fund losses. You can go to the bank and borrow money, and the bank can say to you, you've got no more credit. You've got no mail. All right. You can go to a payday lender and say, hey, if I give you 20% on your money, can you lend me money? MLB may not approve it. You can write a check yourself as the owner. You can do a capital call and get all the limited partners to put in money pari passu, meaning if you own 30% and the team needs $100 million, the 30% owner has to write a $30 million check. It's like if you own 50% of a business and they need money, you got to put in 50% of what they owe, what they need. If the team is profitable, if your business is profitable and you own 50% and there's a distribution of $10, you get $5. It's pretty easy math. The owner can raise money that way through limited partners, through a cash call. Or if you own 50% of a team, you can go to a person and say, hey, would you like to buy part of my team? I'm willing to sell you 25% of the team. I want a lot of money for it because I'm going to value our team at $3 billion. So 25% of the team is $750 million. I'll take it. You give me $750, I give you 25%. I won't give you control, John Middleton said. I've got control. You won't get to go to owners' meetings. I go to owners' meetings. You won't get to not pay for your seats. We'll get you good seats, but you got to pay for your seats. But we'd like the $750 million. You could do that. And when you own equity in something, you can sell off that equity, but eventually you run out of equity. And if you use that money to fund losses, it's the worst plan that you could ever have financially. Because as you know in sports, at the end of a season, it's over. Win or lose the World Series, it's over. So what happened is word gets out that the Phillies raised $500 million by selling a 25% stake in their team. The valuation was $3 billion, but remember, we know about enterprise valuation and equity valuation. Enterprise valuation equals equity valuation plus debt. The Phillies already have debt on their team, which is why Middleton didn't get $750 million. He only got $500 million. You can do the math right now. That means there's about $1 billion of debt. But in any case, what people thought is he was raising this money, and that means they're going after Soto. What? No, it doesn't. If anyone gives you money in order to sign a player, you have found maybe the least intelligent investor in the history of investing. Forget what you read with the Dodgers and Ohtani. Ohtani's paying for himself. The most brilliant deal the Dodgers have ever made. They made $120 million on Ohtani last year, and they only had to pay him $2 million. Brilliant. Give me a small break. Do you know the amount of revenue that Juan Soto will generate for the Phillies? Wait for it. Almost zero. Sorry, Scott, but that's the truth. There are very few needle movers. Here's what'll make money. If you have a deep run and win a World Series, and then you can raise your prices the next year, you can sell out, you can charge more to your corporate sponsors. Your TV deal won't change. Your gate revenue will go up. Sponsorship revenue will go up. You think it'll go up by $100 million? Nope. $50 million? If you're lucky. And I mean lucky. There is no one who's giving Middleton money to go after Soto. The Phillies, much like the Giants and the Blue Jays, they're not really in the Soto market. Because Major League Baseball, let's start with what they know. They know that John Middleton keeps selling equity. He keeps having to raise money because they're losing money. No one wants to believe me, and I'm getting a little tired of it. But we keep seeing facts about teams that are forced to raise capital because their operation stinks. I was the president of a stinky operation for a lot of years. You've got two choices. Either borrow more money, sell more shares, or lower your expenses, i.e. lower your payroll. That's it. The other reason I know that the Giants and Phillies and Blue Jays aren't going to get Soto is Aaron Boone came out and said, hey, I'm going to be at the meeting. Booney, I love you, man. And I love that you're willing to go to California for the meeting. You know that. But you also understand that your presence there is entirely full of eyewash. He played with you for a year. Soto was there. I understand bringing a manager to a meeting who Soto may not know. I've never had a player. I've never heard of another team telling me a story, and any free agent I dealt with. Hey, who's your manager? I want to hear from your manager. I'm really, and by the way, when you hire a manager, please make sure that they fly out and come see me in the off season, because that's really what I want to be doing. Not. You always hear new managers say that. Yes, I went to see my players. They were so super excited on a Tuesday in the off season when they'd rather be sleeping or hanging out. I was happy to spend an hour. And the team was more than happy to fly me commercially in first class to go see all my players. So when we got to spring training, we had a pre-existing relationship. It's such a joke. And we all do it because we're like, oh, maybe it'll work. Maybe this will be the time that the manager will make the difference. You can bet your bippy that the Marlins hope that their new hire has that impact. We're going to hear that from Clayton McCullough. Clayton McCullough was just hired. He's the Dodgers' first base coach. He's the new manager for the Marlins. And he was announced yesterday. And Peter Bendix, their president of baseball operations, who's trying to create the Rays on the east coast of Florida, he's going to learn very quickly that that is very hard to replicate, because if it were easy to replicate, the Marlins wouldn't be the only team trying to do it. But I digress. What made me smile is what they're focused on in Miami. And I just want to know, as fans of baseball, fans of any sport, when your manager and general manager come out with this, I just want to know if this is where your head is. McCullough released a statement, and he's a good guy, so I'm not impugning him at all. But they chose a statement for him, and the end of it was, I get to lead the Marlins franchise forward with a culture that is built on determination, focus, and care. Put a tear in my eye. That's what we're looking for. We are looking for determination, focus, and care. We are going to focus. You have no idea when it's time for PIP, pitchers infield practice, or PFP, pitchers fielders practice in spring training. We're going to get to Jupiter, and we're going to focus, baby. We are determined to be a better organization because we care. Well, I've been around players my entire career. If you get more than 50% of your players on your team to care, then you're a genius. If you get more than 70% on your team to focus at all times, then you're a Hall of Famer. As far as determination goes, good luck. I want to spend a minute talking about what else happened in Miami, because a couple of days ago, the Lionel Messi and Inter Miami got eliminated from the MLS Cup. It's basically was a huge upset. Atlanta beat them 2 out of 3 over the course of 2 weeks. They only play every weekend. And I was blown away, because I told people before it started that, of course, Messi's going to win the deciding game. They need Messi to continue on to the quarters and semis in the MLS Cup. It just has to happen. There's too much invested. And I've always told you that is the desire of leagues, to get the Yankees and Dodgers in always. You want the Knicks to make it, but clearly you can't control all outcomes. You try as you may. Inter Miami has gotten a bump from Messi, and much like when Clark got eliminated from the WNBA playoffs, Caitlin Clark, the WNBA numbers continue to be good, but obviously nothing like if Clark and the Fever had been able to survive the first round and move on to the WNBA all the way through the finals. The real issue that I focused on was not the problem that MLS was having by Messi being gone, that it's another year of Messi, and Inter Miami is down to 1 year with Messi, and they're still not in their new stadium here in Miami. So I'm not here in Miami. I don't know why I said that. 4869. Inter Miami is still in Fort Lauderdale. They will be in Fort Lauderdale next year. When you fly into Miami, you can see the new stadium being built, only if you can envision what it would be like if you were stuck in the Sahara for 6 weeks. It would just come to you, and you were sure that you saw it. What you really see is a bunch of tractors moving dirt. But Inter Miami is a problem because they just come out and tell you their team is worth $1 billion now. There's no basis for that. They've got huge financial obligations. They have a payroll. Remember, Miami spent $41.7 million on payroll. A huge amount compared to any of the other teams. It is not sustainable. The team operationally has a problem. The deal with Messi was so significantly favorable to Messi that MLS basically got themselves in bed with him, and their expectation was that they would see results. And the real results happened. They got some signups on Apple for sure. But the real thing they needed was this deep playoff run. So it's a problem for MLS. And they're going to pretend, just like the WNBA did, they'll release numbers. They'll say everything's fine. Our business is not focused just on Messi and Inter Miami. We've got a whole bunch of teams. As a matter of fact, the team that wins the Supporters Shield doesn't often win the MLS Cup. So this is a normal state of affairs for an ever-growing league. We deserve to be mentioned in the top 4 North American leagues. Everything's fine. I would simply argue that when you put all your eggs in one business basket, which MLS has done with Messi, it becomes even more critical that at some point, if his time in Major League Soccer is to be judged as a catalyst to future franchise valuations, then he needs to be a better performer on a better team. At the end of the day, Don Garber and the owners of Inter Miami, they'll just look right in the camera after their elimination and say, hey, it's just business. We'll be back tomorrow. This is nothing personal.